Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giriraja. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giriraja. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giriraja. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giriraja. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Giriraja. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giriraja. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giriraja. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giriraja. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajaka Astotra Sita Sri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajaka Astotra Sita Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
All glories to Sri Guru and
Sri
Gauranga.
Oh, we welcome you on the auspicious appearance day of Sri Gadadhar Pandit. To celebrate this occasion, to honor this occasion, we shall read about Sri Gadadhar Pandit from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
To begin, we shall read about the identity of Sri Gadadhar Pandit, and then we will read about his qualities and pastimes. This is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, Chapter 10, Text 15. This is describing the branches of the Lord Chaitanya tree. Bhadasaka Gadadhara Pandita Gosani Tenho Lakshmi Rupa Tanra Samake Hanahi. Translation. Gadadhar Pandit, the fourth branch, is described as an incarnation of the pleasure potency of Sri Krishna. No one, therefore, can equal him. purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Gaur Ganodesha Deepika, the Gaur Ganodesha Deepika is a work by Shikavi Kanapur in which he explains the internal identities, or we could say the identity of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes in Krishna's pastimes. So, in the Gaur Ganodesha Deepika, verses 147 through 153, it is stated, the pleasure potency of Sri Krishna, formerly known as Vrindavaneshwari, means Radharani, the Queen of Vrindavan, is now personified in the form of Sri Gadadhar Pandit in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami has pointed out that in the shape of Lakshmi, the pleasure potency of Krishna, she was formerly very dear to the Lord as Shyam Sundar Vallabha. The same Shyam Sundar Vallabha is now present as Gadadhar Pandit. Formerly, as Lalita Sakhi, she was always devoted to Srimati Radharani. In the 12th chapter of this part of Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a description of the descendants or disciplic succession of Gadadhar Pandit. In other words, Gadadhar Pandit in Krishna Lila was Srimati Radharani. But because, and we will read about this later, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had adopted the mood of Srimati Radharani, Gadadhar Pandit did not exhibit Srimati Radharani's mood, but he took the role of supporting Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his attitude as Srimati Radharani. Now, we will read from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 16, the Lord's attempt to go to Vrindavan, which very much highlights the love between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Gadadhar Pandit. So, when Lord Chaitanya decided to leave Jagannath Puri and proceed to Vrindavan, many devotees wanted to accompany him, and one of them was Gadadhar Pandit. But Gadadhar Pandit was forbidden by the Lord to come for two reasons. One, Gadadhar Pandit had taken a vow of kshetra sannyas, which means that one takes a vow not to spend the night outside of a particular holy place. And the other is that Gadadhar was serving the deity of Gopinath, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't want him to leave his service. So, text 127 to 129. Paramananda Puri Goswami, Swarup Damodar, Jagadananda, Mukunda, Govinda, Kashishwar, Haridas Thakur, Vakreshwar Pandit, Gopinath Acharya, Damodar Pandit, Ramai, Nandai, and many other devotees accompanied the Lord. I've mentioned only the chief devotees. No one can describe the total number. 130. Gadadhar Pandit Yabe Sangeta Chalila Kshetra Sanyasanat Chadiha Prabhu Nisvedila. When Gadadhar Pandit started to go with the Lord, he was forbidden to come and was asked not to give up the vow of Kshetra Sannyas. Purport. When one takes Kshetra Sannyas, he leaves his household life and goes to a place of pilgrimage devoted to Lord Vishnu. Such places include Purushottama, Jagannath Puri, Navadvip Dham, and Mathura Dham. The Kshetra Sannyasi lives in these places alone or with family. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur considers Kshetra Sannyas to be the preferable vanaprastha situation in this age of Kali. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya lived in this way, and he has been called a Kshetra Sannyasi, that is, a sannyasi living in Jagannath Puri. 131. When he was requested to return to Jagannath Puri, Gadadhar Pandit told the Lord, "Wherever you are staying is Jagannath Puri. Let my so-called Kshetra Sannyas go to hell." Actually, that word is there in the Bengali, Yoga Rasatala. Let it go to hell. (132) Prabhu kahe inha kara gopinatha sevana Pandit kahi koti seva vat padadarshana. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Gadadhar Pandit to remain at Jagannath Puri and engage in Gopinath service, Gadadhar Pandit replied, "One renders service to Gopinath 1,000,000 times simply by seeing your lotus feet." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, "If you abandon his service, it will be my fault. It is better that you remain here and render service. That will be my satisfaction." The Pandit replied, "Do not worry. All the faults will be on my head. I shall not accompany you, but shall go alone." "I shall go to see Sachimata, but I shall not go for your sake. I shall be responsible for the abandoning of my vow and service to Gopinath." A lot of back and forth here. Thus Gadadhar Pandit Goswami traveled alone. But when they all arrived at Cuttack, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called him, and he went in the Lord's company. Panditera Gauranga Prema Bhujana Nayaya Pratigya Sri Krishna Seva Chadila Trinapraya. No one can understand the loving intimacy between Gadadhar Pandit and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Giriraja Pandit gave up his vow and service to Gopinath, just as one gives up a piece of straw, because of his ecstatic love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport. Just to get Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's association, Giriraja Pandit gave up his life's vow to engage in Gopinath service. This kind of loving affection can be understood only by very confidential devotees. Ordinarily, no one can understand its purport. 138. Giriraja Pandit's behavior was very pleasing to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's heart. Nevertheless, the Lord took his hand and spoke to him, displaying the anger of love. Pranaya Rosha. Anger and love. You have abandoned Gopinath service and broken your vow to live in Puri. All that is now complete because you have come so far. Your wanting to go with me is simply a desire for sense gratification. In this way, you are breaking two religious principles, and because of this, I am very unhappy. If you want my happiness, please return to Nilachal. You will simply condemn me if you say any more about this matter. Saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got onto a boat, and Giriraja Pandit immediately fell down in an unconscious state. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to take Giriraja Pandit with him. The Bhattacharya told Giriraja Pandit, "Get up. Such are the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You should know that Lord Krishna himself violated his own promise just to keep the promise of grandfather Bhishma." 145. Svanigamam apayamat pratigyam ritam adikartumavapluto ratasta tritarata charanobhyaya chadagur harir ivahantum ibam gatotarya. Translation. Intending to make my promise true, the Lord broke his own promise not to take up a weapon at Kurukshetra. With his outer garment falling off, Lord Sri Krishna jumped from his chariot, picked up a wheel, and came running at me to kill me. Indeed, he rushed at me like a lion going to kill an elephant, and he caused the whole earth to tremble. Purport. Lord Krishna promised not to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra or even take up a weapon. But when Bhishma wanted to keep his own promise to break the promise of the Lord immediately got down from the chariot, and to make Bhishma's promise true, he picked up a chariot wheel and rushed forward to kill him. This is a quotation from srimadbhagavatam 1:9-37. So this is a very instructive pastime about the characteristic of Lord Krishna, which also applies to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But during the battle of Kurukshetra, Duryodhana, who was a very expert diplomat, accused Grandfather Bhishma, who was his general, of not fighting to his full capacity because of his affection for the Pandavas. So Grandfather Bhishma, because this is a challenge, and Kshatriyas have to meet challenges. So Grandfather Bhishma responded to that challenge by saying that in battle, I will kill Arjuna, or I will force Krishna to break his vow not to take up weapons in the battle in order to save Arjuna. And so it happened that Bhishma Dev fought so ferociously or heroically that Arjuna really was in grave danger. And to protect Arjuna, Krishna broke his own promise. And he got down from the chariot, picked up a chariot wheel, and rushed forward as if to kill Bhishma Dev. So Lord Krishna considered the promise of Bhishma Dev more important than his own promise. In other words, he went to that extent of breaking his own promise to keep the promise of Bhishma Dev intact. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in a similar way, wanted to keep Gadadhar Pandit's vow, promise of service to Gopinath and Kshetra Sannyas intact. So just reread the last couple of translations to bring us back to where we left off. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to take Gadadhar Pandit with him. The Bhattacharya told Gadadhar Pandit, "Get up. Such are the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You should know that Lord Krishna himself violated his own promise just to keep the promise of Grandfather Bhishma." Quote from srimadbhagavatam. "Intending to make my promise true, Lord Krishna broke his own promise not to take up a weapon at Kurukshetra. With his outer garment falling off, Lord Sri Krishna jumped from his chariot, picked up a wheel, and came running at me to kill me. Indeed, he rushed at me like a lion going to kill an elephant, and he caused the whole earth to tremble." 146. This is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya speaking to Gadadhar Pandit. "Similarly, tolerating your separation, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has protected your vow with great endeavor." So it's not that Krishna wanted to break his promise, but he did it for the sake of Bhishma Dev's word. And it's also not that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to be separated from Gadadhar Pandit, but he accepted that position in order to protect Gadadhar Pandit's vow. 147. In this way, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya revived Gadadhar Pandit. Then both of them, very much grief-stricken, returned to Jagannath Puri, Nilachal. All the devotees would abandon all kinds of duties for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's sake. Yet the Lord did not like the devotees giving up their promised duties. All these are the misgivings of loving affairs. Premera Vivarta. Whoever listens to these incidents gets Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shelter very soon. Have you been listening? And you will get Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shelter very soon. Okay. Next we will read a very interesting account of how Gadadhar Pandit apparently went against Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mood and decision. This is from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya Lila, Chapter 7. Lord Chaitanya meets Vallabha Bhatta. So Vallabha Bhatta was a learned scholar, but he had one defect, and that is that he was proud. So much so that he would always enter the assembly of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees and try to impress them with his knowledge, with his learning, with his cleverness. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not like any devotee to be proud, and thus he dealt with Vallabha Bhatta in such a way as to smash his pride, which was not easy for Vallabha Bhatta to accept. And under those circumstances, he took shelter of Gadadhar Pandit to try to redeem his good name. And thus he put Gadadhar Pandit in a very awkward position. So we will read about this. So when Vallabha Bhatta came to Jagannath Puri and saw Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing at the Rath Yatra festival, he concluded, here is Lord Krishna without a doubt. So this is Antya Lila, Chapter 7, text 180. One day, after the festival was over, Vallabha Bhatta went to the abode of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and submitted a request at the lotus feet of the Lord. I have written some commentary on srimadbhagavatam, he said. Would your lordship kindly hear it? The Lord replied, I do not understand the meaning of srimadbhagavatam. Indeed, I am not a suitable person to hear its meaning. He knew, so he was avoiding. I simply sit and try to chant the holy name of Krishna. And although I chant all day and night, I nevertheless cannot complete the chanting of my prescribed number of rounds. Anyone ever to have that feeling. Vallabhabhata said, because Lord Chaitanya said, I won't hear your commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. So then Vallabhabhata said, I've tried to describe elaborately the meaning of Krishna's holy name. Kindly hear the explanation. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, I do not accept many meanings of the holy name of Krishna. I know only that Lord Krishna is Shamsundar and Yashodanandana. That's all I know. And then he recited a verse. Tamala Shamala Tvishi Shri Yasoda Stanandaya Krishna Namno Rudir Iti Sarva Shastram Vinirnaya. The only purport of the holy name of Krishna is that he is dark blue like a tamal tree and is the son of Mother Yashoda. This is the conclusion of all the revealed scriptures. Purport. This is a verse from the Nama Kaumudi. Text 87. I conclusively know these two names, Shamsundar and Yashodanandana. I do not understand any other meanings, nor have I the capacity to understand them. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is omniscient. Therefore he could understand that Vallabhabhata's explanations of Krishna's name in Srimad Bhagavatam were useless. Therefore, he did not care about them. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rigidly declined to hear his explanations, Vallabhabhata went home feeling morose. His faith and devotion to the Lord changed. Thereafter, Vallabhabhata went to the home of Gadadhar Pandit. He kept coming and going, showing affection in various ways, and thus maintained a relationship with him. Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not take Vallabhabhata very seriously, none of the people in Jagannath Puri would hear any of his explanations. Ashamed, insulted, and unhappy, Vallabhabhata went to Gadadhar Pandit. Approaching him with great humility, Vallabhabhata said, I have taken shelter of you, my dear sir. Kindly be merciful to me and save my life. Hear my explanation of the meaning of Lord Krishna's name. In that way, the mud of the shame that has come upon me will be washed off. Text 95. Sankate Batila Pandita Karaye Samshaya Ki Karibena Eko Karite Na Pare Nischaya. Thus Pandit Gosani fell into a dilemma. He was in such doubt that he could not decide alone what to do. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not take Vallabhabhata very seriously. Therefore, Pandit Gosani, or Gadadhar Gosani, fell into perplexity. What would be his position if he heard Vallabhabhata's explanation of Sri Krishna's name? Certainly, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would be displeased. Therefore, Gadadhar Pandit Gosani could not make a decision. Although Gadadhar Pandit Gosani did not want to hear it, Vallabhabhata began to read his explanation with great force. Because Vallabhabhata was a learned Brahmin, Gadadhar Pandit could not forbid him. Thus he began to think of Lord Krishna. "My dear Lord Krishna," he requested, "please protect me in this danger. I have taken shelter of you." Text 98. Antaryami Prabhu Jani Bena Moramana Tanre Baya Nahi Kichu Vishama Tanragana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is present in everyone's heart, and he will certainly know my mind. Therefore, I do not fear him. His associates, however, are extremely critical. Purport. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exists in everyone's heart. Therefore, he would know the circumstances under which Pandit Goswami agreed to hear Vallabhabhata's explanations, and certainly he would not be angry. However, the Vaishnavas who were always with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu might not understand Gadadhar Pandit's inner consciousness, and they might accuse him of having compromised with Vallabhabhata, despite his having been neglected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gadadhar Pandit Goswami was seriously thinking in this way. And his apprehension that Lord Chaitanya's associates would be critical of him proved to be true, borne out. Text 99. Although Gadadhar Pandit Goswami was not in the least at fault, some of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees showed affectionate anger toward him. Again, Pranaya Rosha. Every day, Vallabhabhata would come to the place of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to engage in unnecessary arguments with Advaita Acharya and other great personalities, such as Swarup Damodar. Whatever conclusions Vallabhabhata eagerly presented were refuted by personalities like Advaita Acharya. Whenever Vallabhabhata entered the society of devotees, headed by Advaita Acharya, he was like a duck in a society of white swans. One day, Vallabhabhata said to Advaita Acharya, "Every living entity is female, Prakriti, and considers Krishna her husband, Pati. It is the duty of a chaste wife, devoted to her husband, not to utter her husband's name. But you all chant the name of Krishna. How can this be called a religious principle?" Advaita Acharya responded, "In front of you is Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the personification of religious principles. You should ask him, for he will give you the proper answer." Hearing this, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "My dear Vallabhabhata, you do not know religious principles. Actually, the first duty of a chaste woman is to carry out the order of her husband. The order of Krishna is to chant his name incessantly. Therefore, one who is chaste and adherent to the husband Krishna must chant the Lord's name, for she cannot deny the husband's order." Where does Krishna say to chant his name incessantly? Yes, Balaram? Yeah. Satatam Kirtayantam. The great souls are always chanting his glories, are always engaged in kirtan. The order of Krishna is to chant his name incessantly. Therefore, one who is chaste and adherent to the husband Krishna must chant the Lord's name, for she cannot deny the husband's order. Following this religious principle, a pure devotee of Lord Krishna always chants the holy name. As a result of this, he gets the fruit of ecstatic love for Krishna. Hearing this, Vallabhavata was speechless. He returned home greatly unhappy and began to consider thus: every day I am defeated in this assembly. If by chance I am one day victorious, that will be a great source of happiness for me, and all my shame will go away. But what means shall I adopt to establish my statements? The next day, when he came to the assembly of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he sat down after offering obeisances to the Lord and said something with great pride. In my commentary on Srimadbhagavatam, he said, I have refuted the explanations of Sridhar Swami. I cannot accept his explanations. Whatever Sridhar Swami reads, he explains according to the circumstances. Therefore, he is inconsistent in his explanations and cannot be accepted as an authority. Now, Sridhar Swami is considered the original commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, and all subsequent commentaries follow his footsteps. Prabhu hasi kahe, smiling. This is an important point. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smilingly replied, one who does not accept the Swami, husband, because Swami also means husband, master, husband, is as an authority, I consider a prostitute. After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very grave. All the devotees present derived great satisfaction from hearing this statement. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descended as an incarnation for the benefit of the entire world. Thus he knew the mind of Vallabhavata very well. By various hints and refutations, Lord Chaitanya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, corrected Vallabhavata, exactly as Krishna had cut down the false pride of Indra. Purport: Indra, the king of heaven, was very proud of his position. Therefore, when the residents of Vrindavan decided not to perform the Indra Yagya, but to perform the Govardhan Yagya in accordance with the instructions of Krishna, Indra, because of his false pride, wanted to chastise the residents of Vrindavan. Thinking himself extremely powerful, Indra poured incessant rain upon Vrindavan. But Lord Krishna immediately cut down his pride by lifting the Govardhan hill as an umbrella to save the residents of Vrindavan. In this way, Krishna proved Indra's power most insignificant in the presence of his own omnipotence. Krishna showed that he could defeat Indra with the tip of his little finger on his left hand. An ignorant living being does not recognize his actual process. Because of ignorance and material pride, he sometimes considers profit a loss. But when his pride is cut down, he can actually see his true benefit. Returning home that night, Vallabhabhata thought, previously at Prayag, Lord Chaitanya was very kind to me. He accepted my invitation with his other devotees, and he was kind to me. Why has he now changed so much here at Jagannath Puri? Being very proud of my learning, I am thinking, let me become victorious. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, is trying to purify me by nullifying this false pride. For a characteristic of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is that he acts for everyone's welfare. Vallabhabhata is having an awakening. I am falsely proud, advertising myself as a learned scholar. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu insults me just to favor me by cutting down this false pride. He is actually acting for my benefit, although I interpret his actions as insults. This is exactly like the incident in which Lord Krishna cut down Indra, the great puffed-up fool, to correct him. Mahamurkha, great fool. Thinking in this way, Vallabhabhata approached Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the next morning, and in great humility, offering many prayers, he sought shelter and surrendered at the lotus feet of the Lord. Vallabhabhata admitted, I am a great fool, and indeed I have acted like a fool by trying to demonstrate to you my learning. My dear Lord, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You have shown mercy to me in a way befitting your position by insulting me to cut down my false pride. I am an ignorant fool, for I interpret such an insult, for I interpret as an insult what is meant for my benefit, just like King Indra, who out of ignorance tried to surpass Krishna, the Supreme Lord. My dear Lord, you have cured the blindness of my false pride by smearing my eyes with the ointment of your mercy. You have bestowed so much mercy upon me that my ignorance is now gone. My dear Lord, I have committed offenses. Please excuse me. I take shelter of you. Please be merciful unto me by placing your lotus feet on my head. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you are both a greatly learned scholar and a great devotee. Wherever there are two such attributes, there cannot be a mountain of false pride. You have dared criticize Sridhar Swami, and you have begun your own commentary on srimadbhagavatam, not accepting his authority. That is your false pride. Sridhar Swami is the spiritual master of the entire world, because by his mercy we can understand srimadbhagavatam. I therefore accept him as a spiritual master. Whatever you might write due to false pride, trying to surpass Sridhar Swami would carry a contrary purport. Therefore, no one would pay attention to it. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam has many tikas, or commentaries, following the parampara system. But Sridhar Swami's is first. The commentaries of all the other acharyas follow his. The parampara system does not allow one to deviate from the commentaries of the previous acharyas. By depending upon the previous acharyas, one can write beautiful commentaries. However, one cannot defy the previous acharyas. The false pride that makes one think that he can write better than the previous acharyas will make one's comments faulty. At the present moment, it has become fashionable for everyone to write in his own way. But such writing is never accepted by serious devotees. Because of false pride, every scholar and philosopher wants to establish his learning by interpreting the Shastras, especially Bhagavad Gita and Srimadbhagavatam, in his own way. This system of commenting in one's own way is fully condemned by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, he says, Artha Vyasta Likana Se. Commentaries written according to one's own philosophical way are never accepted. No one will appreciate such commentaries on the revealed scriptures. Text 135. One who comments on Srimad Bhagavatam following in the footsteps of Sridhar Swami will be honored and accepted by everyone. Put forth your explanation of Srimad Bhagavatam following in the footsteps of Sridhar Swami. Giving up your false pride, worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Abandoning your offenses, chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the holy names of Krishna. Then very soon you will achieve shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. Vallabhavata Acharya requested Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you are actually pleased with me, please accept my invitation once again. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who had descended to deliver the entire universe, accepted the invitation of Vallabhavata just to give him happiness. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is always eager to see everyone in the material world happy. Therefore, sometimes he chastises someone, just to purify his heart. When Vallabhavata invited Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, the Lord was very pleased with him. Jagadananda Pandit's pure ecstatic love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very deep. It can be compared to the love of Satyabhama, who always quarreled with Lord Krishna. Jagadananda Pandit was accustomed to provoking loving quarrels with the Lord. There was always some disagreement between them. Gadadhar Pandit's pure ecstatic love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also very deep. It was like that of Rukmini Devi, who was always especially submissive to Krishna. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sometimes desired to see Gadadhar Pandit's affectionate anger. But because of knowledge of the Lord's opulences, his anger was never invoked. Purport. Joking with Rukmini Devi in Dwarka, Krishna once advised her to accept another husband because he thought himself unfit for her. Rukmini Devi, however, unable to understand his joking words, took them very seriously and immediately fell to the ground in fear of separation from him. In the pastimes of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jagadananda Pandit was always in disagreement with the Lord like Satyabhama, whereas Gadadhar Pandit was always awed by the Lord's opulence and was therefore submissive to the Lord under all circumstances. Text 146. For this purpose, that means as Lord Krishna wanted to see Rukmini Devi's anger and he teased her, so for this purpose Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sometimes showed his apparent anger. Hearing of this anger inspired great fear in the heart of Gadadhar Pandit. Previously in Krishna Lila, when Lord Krishna wanted to joke with Rukmini Devi, she took his words seriously, and fear awoke within her mind. Vallabhabhata was accustomed to worshipping the Lord as child Krishna. This Vallabhabhata is known as Vallabhacharya, famous acharya of the Pushti Marg, or Vallabha Sampradaya. Vallabhabhata was accustomed to worshipping the Lord as child Krishna. Therefore, he had been initiated into the Bala Gopal mantra and was thus worshipping the Lord. In the association of Gadadhar Pandit, his mind was converted, and he dedicated his mind to worshipping Kishore Gopal, Krishna as a young boy. Vallabhabhata wanted to be initiated by Gadadhar Pandit, but Gadadhar Pandit refused, saying, "The work of acting as a spiritual master is not possible for me. I am completely dependent. My Lord is Gaurachandra, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I cannot do anything independently without his order. My dear Vallabhabhata, your coming to me is not appreciated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, he sometimes speaks to chastise me." Some days passed, and when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, finally pleased with Vallabhabhata, accepted his invitation, the Lord sent Swarup Damodar, Jagadananda Pandit, and Govinda to call for Gadadhar Pandit. On the way, Swarup Damodar said to Gadadhar Pandit, "Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to test you, therefore he neglected you. Why did you not retaliate by reproaching him? Why did you fearfully tolerate his criticism?" Gadadhar Pandit said, "Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is completely independent. He is the topmost omniscient personality. It would not look well for me to talk to him as if his equal. I can tolerate whatever he says, bearing it upon my head. He will automatically be merciful to me after considering my faults and attributes." After saying this, Gadadhar Pandit went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and fell down crying at the lotus feet of the Lord. Smiling slightly, the Lord embraced him and spoke sweet words so that others would also hear. "I wanted to agitate you," the Lord said, "but you did not become agitated. Indeed, you could not say anything angry. Instead, you tolerated everything. Your mind was not disturbed by my tricks. Rather, you stayed fixed in your simplicity. In this way, you have purchased me." No one can describe the characteristics and ecstatic love of Gadadhar Pandit. Therefore, another name for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Gadadhar Prananath, the life and soul of Gadadhar Pandit. No one can say how merciful the Lord is to Gadadhar Pandit, but people know the Lord is Gadaira Gora, the Lord Gauranga of Gadadhar Pandit. No one can understand the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They are like the Ganges, for hundreds and thousands of branches flow from even one of his activities. Gadadhar Pandit is celebrated all over the world for his gentle behavior, his Brahminical attributes, and his steady love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Lord purified Vallabhabhata by cleansing him of the mud of false pride. By such activities, the Lord also instructed others. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was actually always merciful within his heart, but he was sometimes externally negligent of his devotees. We should not be preoccupied with his external feature, however, for if we do so, we shall be vanquished. The pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are very deep. Who can understand them? Only one who has firm, deep devotion to his lotus feet. Another day, Gadadhar Pandit invited Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to dinner. The Lord took prasad at his home with his personal associates. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu acted as a very merciful well-wisher toward Vallabhabhata by externally neglecting him in many ways to purify him of his false pride in being a learned scholar. The Lord neglected Gadadhar Pandit for a few days because of his associating with Vallabhabhata. Actually, he was not at all displeased with Gadadhar Pandit. Indeed, because Gadadhar Pandit is the personal potency of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there is no chance of the Lord's being dissatisfied with him. However, a person who is too attracted to externals cannot understand the deep meaning of these dealings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If one therefore becomes disrespectful to Gadadhar Pandit, he will surely be vanquished. Text 171. There, that means at the lunch at Gadadhar Pandit's home, there, Vallabhabhata took permission from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and his desire to be initiated by Gadadhar Pandit was thus fulfilled. I have thus explained the Lord's meeting with Vallabhabhata. By hearing of this incident, one can achieve the treasure of love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Have you heard this incident? Shri Rupa Raghunatha Padayara Asha Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Dasa. Praying at the lotus feet of Shri Rupa and Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya-lila, 7th chapter, describing the meeting of Vallabhabhata with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Abhinanda Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
It's interesting to me, and I've always actually wondered this question. I never had it answered before. That here we have Vallabhacharya taking initiation from Gadadhar Pandit, Srimati Radharani herself, yet the Pushpi Marg still to this day only worships Srimatji or Vallabhapal rather than Radharani. I wonder why.
Yes. That is a good question. I mean, the deity of Srinathji was actually discovered by Srimadbhagavatam Puri and was worshipped by him and his followers. But after the departure of Vallabhacharya, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas gave the deity to one of Vallabhacharya's sons to worship in order to give him solace in separation. And that deity is Krishna, actually lived in Govardhan Hill. But it's true that most of the followers of Vallabhacharya and Pushti Marg, they worship Bal Gopal, which was Vallabhacharya's original inclination. But this fact that, well, it's, I hate to say it, but there's some misinformation. Well, we would say misinformation being propagated in the Vallabhacharya Sampradaya. They actually have their own story that Vallabhacharya discovered the deity of Srinathji, not Madhavendra Puri. So so his being initiated by Gadadhar Pandit and his affection for Bal Gopal being transferred to Kaishora Gopal, it just hasn't filtered down in their sampradaya. Yeah, it's just, yeah. But there's a very big, should say, controversy about this section of Chaitanya Charitamrita between Srila Prabhupada and Sumati Morarji, who was his great benefactor. But it wasn't her so much, but maybe the Tilkaith Maharaj from Nathdwara. So this, Prabhupada spoke on this, and that article, the talk was transcribed and published in Back to Godhead. And so the Tilkaith Maharaj, the leader of the Sampradaya in Nathdwara, took up the matter with Sumati Morarji that, you know, you sent him to America and now he's blaspheming our Vallabhacharya-ji by saying he's a prostitute. So Sumati Morarji wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada wrote back so intelligently, I mean compassionately and intelligently, that well, that's why I commented that when Lord Chaitanya accused him of being a prostitute, he was smiling, because Prabhupada highlighted that point. He had his secretary type out the entire section of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he quoted that they were friends. And he gave the example that sometimes in a court of law, two lawyers will argue very vehemently, but that outside of the courtroom, they're friends, and they may, have dinner together. So he was saying that although there was a disagreement between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Vallabhacharya on the basis of Shastra, but personally they were friends. And, sometimes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would accept Vallabhacharya's invitations for dinner and so on. And Srila Prabhupada, so in the same way, we may disagree, but we should also be friends. And then he said that just as you are disturbed because you feel that your guru was being disrespected, so what is the wrong if Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who accepted Sridhar Swami as his guru, became disturbed when he felt his guru was being disrespected by your guru? So, but anyway, he replied very nicely, and she was completely satisfied. And later, the devotees, Murtidas was there, I don't know who else. He visited Nathdwara and met the Tilkaith Maharaj, and the Tilkaith Maharaj donated a beautiful painting of Srinathji with gold leaf and stones, and presented as a gift to Srila Prabhupada. And that painting, framed painting, is still in Srila Prabhupada's quarters across from his translating desk. Oh yeah. And Prabhupada had a very good friend. He was the head of the Vallabhacharya Sampradaya in Bombay. And he became a life member of ISKCON. And Srila Prabhupada even mentions him in one of his purports in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. But there was, anyway, it's always like that. But there were some people in the Vallabhacharya Sampradaya who wanted to stir things up, make trouble, create agitation, sort of envious. But that all died down. Especially when all the scandals in the Vallabhacharya Sampradaya emerged. Then, Hare Krishna. And it did occur to me that because of their offenses against Srila Prabhupada, that all happened. That's what happens when you offend a great devotee. You lose your reputation, your opulence. It really seemed like that's what happened. So yeah, we should always be careful. And that's part of this instruction, that we should be careful not to, misunderstand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dealing with certain devotees, and we should not commit offenses against those devotees because of misunderstanding Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's inner mood. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
Sometimes we see, like we worship Gormitai, and other places we worship Gorgaraja. So is there a difference in the mood of worship or Lord Chaitanya and with Lord Chaitanya and Gorgaraja?
There is. Yeah, there's a little difference because, you know, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are definitely brothers, like clearly Sakya Ras. And although Lord Chaitanya was in the mood of Srimati Radharani, by and large, but he was still Krishna. And Gadadhar Pandit was Srimati Radharani. And so there's a bit of there's an element of Madhurya Ras there. But yeah, the Gaur-Nitai are most merciful, and Srila Prabhupada mercifully gave us Gaur-Nitai. Balaram, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in the reading that said that when Gadadhar Pandit was associated with Vallabhacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood the inner meaning or the inner mood of Gadadhar Pandit. He wasn't displeased. But it said that the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they actually were displeased with Gadadhar Pandit, or they could, So I thought that was interesting because, and sometimes, I was just thinking of a case with Srila Prabhupada where he was in Mayapur, and there was a sannyasi there, Prabhupada disciple sannyasi, and then Prabhupada heard that this sannyasi was supposedly associating with a single woman in an inappropriate way, talking. And then Srila Prabhupada, he approached that sannyasi, and Prabhupada was a little disturbed about it, and he kind of was giving him a hard time about it. But then the sannyasi said, "Oh, Prabhupada, that's not true." But then Prabhupada said, "Well, because that could have been true, and maybe I thought it was true, then I had to say something." So I'm just wondering because, sometimes within our dealings with other devotees, sometimes devotees, they may become disturbed because they think that, they're judging me, they don't know my real intent, and therefore they chastise me over something that I did wrong or something like that. So, how do we, you could say, balance that? How do we be respectful towards devotees? Because sometimes that may happen, in miscommunication or misunderstanding between each other. I don't know if that's exactly clear enough.
Do you want to try to explain your question again?
Like maybe you could elaborate on this idea that, because some people would think that for devotees of Lord Chaitanya to become angry at Gadadhar Pandit, they think that why is it happening? Shouldn't the devotees be more receptive? Shouldn't the devotees be,
Well, because of their love and attachment for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were critical of him because they thought he was deviating from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's example of neglecting Vallabhabhata. That's why they were critical of him. But Lord Chaitanya, as Antaryami, as the omniscient Supreme Personality of Godhead, knew the circumstances under which Gadadhar Pandit entertained Vallabhabhata. So he wasn't displeased. But the devotees were not omniscient, so they didn't know the exact circumstances, and they just saw that he was, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was neglecting him and Giriraja Pandit was entertaining him, so they thought he was deviating from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's way of dealing with him. So you're trying to relate this to ISKCON, or what?
Yeah, related to like our dealings with devotees, because sometimes it's like people, they have that saying, you shoot and then you ask questions, and that's not a good thing to do. So it's like, you give someone a hard time, you chastise and this and that, and then you ask questions. So in other words, there wasn't enough, investigate. There's like too much assuming of the other person's.
Well, that's a good point, that we shouldn't jump to conclusions about other devotees in a negative way without clarifying with them. Although sometimes even clarifying could be taken as offensive, depending on who the devotee is and who we are and what our relationship is. And if it's really not our position to even inquire of the devotee, then we could inquire of someone else who knows the devotee. But yeah, we should be very careful when we deal with devotees. Yeah, not to come to wrong conclusions. Very important point.
Because sometimes I see that like a lot of like junior devotees, and they a senior devotee may give them a hard time about something, or chastise them, correct them, but the junior devotees, they get upset about it, that, oh, shouldn't this devotee, be more perceptive? Shouldn't they know my intermediate, my internal mood? So, I don't know, it's kind of like this, they kind of feel they're being too judged. But I don't know if that, maybe you could.
Well, devotees should be humble, and if a senior is correcting them, they should see, maybe they're meant to learn something or change something. They can, if they feel it would help the senior devotee to understand the situation, they can explain themselves, but not in a defensive mood, based on false ego, but in a humble mood. Like I'm thinking of one little little or big, because it involved Srila Prabhupada, so everything with Srila Prabhupada was big. But there was one incident in which Srila Prabhupada had taught Bhakti Swami how to cook a certain preparation. And then later Bhakti Swami prepared it differently. And Srila Prabhupada was very upset with him. I taught you personally how to make this preparation, and now you're doing it differently. And Bhakti Swami accepted it, But then later he said, but actually it's not that I didn't forget how you taught me to prepare it, but I thought that, if I did it that way, it would be too hard for you to digest or something. It would make you sick, and that's why I did it. And Srila Prabhupada said, oh, well, why didn't you say that earlier? So we can, and sometimes we should, explain ourselves to a superior authority to help them understand us better. Any other questions or comments? All right, so we will take a break now. And what time is this evening program? Starts at 5:30. All right. Well, if we don't meet before then, we can look forward to meeting then. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Srila Gadadhar Pandit ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol.